My brother called me on a Thursday afternoon in October, and I almost didn't answer. Not because I was busy. Not because I didn't have time. Because in 10 years he had called me exactly 4 times, and every single one of those calls had begun with a version of the same sentence. I need a favor. I looked at his name on my screen for 5 full rings. Then I answered. He spoke for 22 minutes without asking how I was. His company was in trouble. A contract dispute with a major supplier had triggered a clause in his primary financing agreement that required unanimous sign-off from all named stakeholders before any restructuring could proceed. I was a named stakeholder. He needed my signature. I listened to all 22 minutes. Then I said I would think about it. He said he needed an answer by Friday. I said I would think about it. We hung up. I sat very still for a long time after that call, not because I didn't know what I was going to do, but because I wanted to sit with the specific feeling of that moment for long enough to understand it properly before I acted on it. The feeling was not triumph. It was not satisfaction in the way that people mean when they talk about revenge being sweet. It was something quieter and more complicated than either of those things. It was the feeling of having spent 10 years building something quietly and alone, and arriving at a moment where the person who had been given everything you were denied needed the one thing you had that he didn't. Your signature, 1 page, 1 pen, 30 seconds, and 10 years of being nothing to a family that gave him everything. But before we dive deeper into this story, I want to ask you a small favor. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button right now. We are on our way to 2,000 subscribers, and we are not even halfway through. Every single one matters deeply to me. And if this story already has you feeling something, go ahead and tap that like button. It takes 2 seconds, and it truly means the world. Thank you. Now let's get into it. My brother's name is Patrick, and he is 4 years older than me, and he has been my parents' favorite since before either of us was old enough to understand what that meant. I want to be careful about how I say this because I think accuracy matters more than making Patrick into a villain. He is not a villain. He is a person who was given advantages he did not ask for, and who accepted them without examining what accepting them cost the person standing next to him. That person was me. Growing up, our parents were not wealthy, but they were careful and deliberate with what they had. My father worked in construction management. My mother worked part-time in school administration. They saved methodically, and they planned carefully, and when there was something extra, a bonus, an inheritance from my grandmother, a good year, they made decisions about where it went. Those decisions almost always went to Patrick, not because they loved him more, I believe that genuinely, but because they had decided very early, in the way that parents sometimes decide things about their children before their children have had any real opportunity to demonstrate who they are, that Patrick was the one with potential. Patrick was going places. Patrick had the drive. Patrick had the vision. I was steady. I was reliable. I was the kind of daughter who would be fine regardless, because I was sensible, and sensible people always found their way. Sensible. I heard that word applied to me so many times throughout my childhood that I stopped hearing it as a compliment long before I was old enough to articulate why. Sensible meant you didn't need what Patrick needed. Sensible meant the extra money went to his private tutoring and his university application support, and the deposit on his first flat, and the small business loan my parents co-signed when he was 26 and wanted to start a company. Sensible meant you found your own way, so I found my own way. University on a partial scholarship, topped up with part-time work. A graduate job, I found myself through applications and interviews, and the specific grinding persistence of someone who has learned not to expect doors to be opened for them. An apartment I rented alone for 3 years before I had saved enough to buy something small and entirely my own. Every step without a co-signed loan, without a deposit gift, without a phone call from my father to someone he knew who could help smooth the path. Just me. Just work. Just the quiet accumulation of one good decision after another, made without a safety net. Patrick's company had done well in its early years. My parents had celebrated every milestone with the specific pride they reserved for him. Dinners out, phone calls I heard about secondhand, a framed article from a local business publication that hung in their hallway for 2 years. I had built my own career in supply chain management, unglamorous, technical, the kind of work that keeps industries functioning and that most people couldn't describe at a dinner party, but that I found genuinely satisfying and that I had become quietly excellent at over 10 years. Nobody framed anything about my work. That was fine. I had stopped needing the frame a long time ago. The stakeholder situation had come about through an unusual set of circumstances that I want to explain carefully because I think the detail matters. 3 years before Patrick's call, my father had made a decision, one of the very few decisions in my adult life that had included me, to restructure some family assets as part of an estate planning process. As part of that restructuring, I had been named as a stakeholder in a holding company that sat above several of my father's investments, including a minority stake in Patrick's business that my father had taken in exchange for the original loan co-signing. My father had included me because his solicitor had advised that naming multiple family members provided better protection for the overall structure. I do not think my father fully understood what he was signing at the time. I understood it completely, because I read everything. Patrick had not known I was a named stakeholder until the contract dispute triggered the clause that required unanimous sign-off. His solicitor had found my name in the documents. Patrick had called me 20 minutes later. I want to pause here for a second, because I know some of you listening right now have a sibling situation that is complicated in ways that are hard to explain to people who haven't lived it, where the favoritism was never announced but was always present, where you learn to need less because needing more was never an option. If that's you, I see you. Drop a comment below and tell me your story. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now. We are building something real here together, and I want you to be part of it from the very beginning. I called my father the evening after Patrick's call, not to report what had happened, not to ask for his opinion on what I should do, but because I wanted to hear his voice, and because there was something I had been carrying for a long time that I had never said directly, and that I thought perhaps needed to be said before I made any decision about Patrick's signature. My father answered on the second ring. We talked for a while about ordinary things, his garden, my mother's hip which had been troubling her, a television series they were both watching. Then I said, "Dad, can I ask you something honestly?" He said yes. I said, "Do you think you gave Patrick and me equal support growing up?" A long silence. Then my father said something I had not expected. He said, "No, I don't think we did, and I have thought about that more than you probably know." I sat with that for a moment. Then I said, "Thank you for saying that." We didn't speak about it further. There was no long conversation about the past, or what could have been different, or what it had cost me, but something shifted in that silence between us that I think both of us felt. I called Patrick the following morning. He answered before the first ring had finished. I told him I would sign the documents, not because he deserved it, not because the 10 years had been erased by one phone call, or because my father's acknowledgement had resolved everything that had accumulated over a lifetime of being the sensible one, but because his company employed 43 people who had nothing to do with the choices our parents had made 30 years ago, and because I had learned something over 10 years of finding my own way that I think is worth saying clearly. The way other people treat you, the advantages they give to someone else, the doors they open that they don't open for you, the loans they co-sign and the deposits they gift and the articles they frame, none of that determines what you are capable of. It only determines how much of your own strength you have to find. And the people who have to find all of it themselves, every single step without a safety net, those people tend to arrive at their destination knowing exactly how they got there, knowing what it cost, knowing what it was worth. I signed Patrick's documents on a Friday afternoon. He said thank you in the specific way people say thank you when they are relieved rather than grateful. I said you're welcome in the specific way people say you're welcome when they know the difference. We hung up. I sat at my desk in my apartment that I had bought alone, and I looked out of the window at the city that I had navigated entirely by myself for 10 years, and I felt something I want to try to describe accurately. Not victory, not vindication, Just a very quiet and very complete sense of being exactly where I was supposed to be, built by everything I had been through rather than despite it. That is what 10 years of finding your own way produces. Not bitterness, roots. Now I want to hear from you. Do you have a sibling situation that feels like this one? Were you the one who had to find your own way while someone else was given the path? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and your stories genuinely matter to me. If this story moved something in you today, please give it a like right now. It helps more people find this channel and hear stories that remind them that being the one who had to build alone is not a disadvantage, it is a foundation. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now. I will see you in the next story. Take care of yourself, always.